since he called, my brother has invited us. We're depending on you, Ashley, because we won't be paying any rent or utilities. My profession is in finance. My spouse, Bob, works as an auto mechanic, and together we own the house I grew up in. I don't mean that my parents still reside in my childhood house. Actually, my father used to be the CEO of our family firm, which has been in the family for a very long time. Originally, my brother was supposed to take over my father's business. Thus, he chose economics as his college major. In addition, my gifted brother worked with my father for a number of years after returning to the United States from Oxford University, where he had studied overseas and gained further knowledge in business administration. My parents eventually decided they wanted to enjoy their retirement and relocated to a town in Colorado called ASP, where they appeared to enjoy a laid-back lifestyle in the middle of the outdoors. My parents gave me, their daughter, the family house because my brother received the firm in exchange, and I made the decision to move in with my spouse. The residence is less than a 5-minute walk from the train station and is well served by public transit. Schools, medical services, and commercial buildings are all easily accessible on foot. Considering that we will be able to live comfortably after our children leave the nest, I'm thankful that my parents gave me this house in that way. We never imagined that our life would end abruptly due to an incident of this nature. Instead, we planned on growing our family and leading a happy existence. Once we moved into this house, my mother-in-law began coming around more often. My mother-in-law frequently inquires about money as she is aware that my parents own a business. She frequently asks questions like, "Hey, Ashley, how much assets do your parents have? When your parents pass away, how much will you inherit?" And I couldn't help but feel that she was really disgusting. She said, "That can't be true, can it? Your parents are over 60. You never know what might happen. They must have discussed their assets with you." I laughed and said, I wonder how much. I've never really thought about it, so I don't know. I've already received the house, so I might not get any money." I became convinced that she was relying on my parents' riches at that moment because she seemed so interested in the asset conversation. I chose to remain silent despite already knowing how much I would receive because I felt it would be best to keep my mother-in-law and my husband, who were close to her, in the dark. But after this, an unimaginable event happened. At approximately 8 in the morning, my mother-in-law and my brother-in-law's family moved into our home without warning. During a vacation. Unexpectedly, the doorbell rang, and when I answered the door, movers were inside. My mother-in-law and my brother-in-law's family arrived, and I was taken aback and perplexed, asking, why are the movers here?" They added, "We're going to be living here from today, so please take care of us." They seemed so happy that I felt shivers down my spine. When I asked my husband to clarify the situation, he casually replied, "What's the problem? If Mom and the others move into this house, it's so spacious, so you should be able to spare some room." He said this as if it was only normal to offer them some space. My husband woke up right then. The fact that we were living together startled me already, but my sister-in-law stated something even more ridiculous. "We were invited by your brother, Ashley, since he called us. We're not going to pay any rent or utilities, so we're counting on you, Ashley." I felt lightheaded at this interaction since my brother-in-law had been breaking into rooms without permission and saying things like, "This room has good sunlight, so give it to us, Bob. Move all the stuff in here out to the hallway. They are trying to use these rooms as their own, but this is my house, and they are opening rooms here and there." For a long time, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's family lacked common sense, particularly my sister-in-law who had previously dug through my purse without permission. "The way things are going, they're going to take over my room. It's got to end. This is my home. Why are you treating this like your own property? It's enough for me. I desire for everyone to leave." Normally, I don't lose my cool or become irate, but I could not bear it when these individuals moved into the house my parents gave me without my consent and started treating it like their own. I lost my temper and yelled at the three of them because of this. However, something unexpected transpired after that. As soon as I said, "How dare you talk to us like that? You're the one who should get out. I had excruciating pain in my cheek. Did I just get slapped? It took me a few seconds after being hit to realize what had happened. I was taken aback. All I could feel was a throbbing agony in my cheek after realizing what had happened. Something inside of me snapped at that very moment. Needless to say, I cannot coexist with individuals who would act in such a manner. However, I own this house. They should not reside here like parasites. I prepared to leave the house and told my family about it while I packed up my belongings. I had to locate a place far from home, so for the time being I rented an apartment on a monthly basis. I would have to travel to work from there. I could tell my folks, especially my dad, were incensed even over the phone as soon as I informed them about it. He has always loved my brother and me and is quite devoted. Although he was a rigorous CEO, as a father he was always understanding and supportive when we needed it. I was being forced to include my parents, who were ready to retire, because my inherited house was being taken away from me, even though I didn't want to involve them in something like this. Even though I was paying rent for an apartment, I knew that my spouse and his family were utilizing my home at will. I therefore made the decision to follow my father's and brother's advice. A few days later, while on break, I checked my phone and discovered that my spouse had numerous missed calls and messages. Well, I knew why he was calling. I had called the water company and the electric company to cut off the utilities. Our house is all electric, so nothing works without electricity, and we haven't installed solar panels yet, so there's no way to supply electricity. My husband's calls were presumably to take action because, as he put it, it's very hot right now, so it must be pretty tough without electricity and water. Just as I was about to ignore it, my husband called again, timing it perfectly with my break. Hey, what's going on? There's no electricity, and the water isn't working. You stopped the electricity and water, didn't you? My spouse sounded so panicked on the phone that I could hear it plainly in our conversation. Since I own the house, I couldn't possibly leave the water and electricity running now that I'm gone, can I? I had it cut off for that reason. Even if I'm not living there, I would still be responsible for the bills if I left the utilities on. Naturally, I got it chopped off because I couldn't tolerate that. My spouse became enraged at this point and insisted that I quickly extend the contract. If they wish to renew it, they should pay for it with their own funds. Just because he says to do so does not mean I'll say, okay, I understand. However, their words and deeds don't match when it comes to this because they always say things like, it's your house, so you should pay. In any case, I have no plans to pay or renew the agreement. If you don't like it, then get out of the house right away. After saying only that, I hung up the phone because my break was ending. Afterwards, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and my brother-in-law all called me. All of them were saying the same thing, they wanted me to get the electricity and water hooked up. The room was hot and uncomfortable, they said. It was inconvenient without water. But all of this was their problem, not mine. After listening to everything they said, I told them to handle it themselves and hung up the phone. I figured they were just greedy for money and thought they would give up and leave soon. However, even after a week passed, there was no sign of them leaving. So I decided to push them further. I consulted with my father's company's lawyer about the situation and asked him to send a notice to my husband. The content of the notice was about trespassing. They had barged into the house I owned without any consultation, drove me out of it, and were using it as their own. I explained to the four of them, who used this malicious tactic, that I was considering taking legal action. Hey, what's going on? Why did a lawyer give me such a document? Did we really need to go this far? My husband, who seemed panicked and not expecting me to go this far, came to me for a settlement. Knowing how concerned they are about their public image, the prospect of being sued would be extremely damaging to them mentally. They definitely want to avoid dealing with a lawyer at all costs, but they don't want to give up their current lifestyle. So they're probably scheming to persuade me to let them continue their current lifestyle. I can see through what my husband is thinking like it's in the palm of my hand. That said, there's no way I can listen to what they have to say. So I didn't comply with my husband. At this, my husband finally exploded in anger, forgetting that he was at work, and yelled at me loudly. "Cut it out. Are you exaggerating the slightest bit because we're a little dishonest? Doesn't mean you have to act all that haughty." He roared in rage, but it had no effect on me. In fact, I was angry by his phone call, thinking, who do you think you are taking over someone else's house? Go back to how things were right now and drop the lawyer. My husband was still screaming over the phone, but I ignored him and hung up. No matter what you say or shout at me, my feelings won't change. If you continue to squat there, I will take legal action. You better think hard before you act. After I arrived home, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law called, but I knew they were just going to discuss resolving the situation. This is a waste of time, and I've already talked to my lawyer about divorce. To avoid wasting any more time, I banned their numbers and stopped receiving calls from them. My arrogant husband's family then packed up and left the house because they couldn't stand the thought of being sued. After that, the attorney got involved, and the divorce talks went well. Finally, I was able to go back to my spotlessly clean home after hiring a house cleaning service. It was nice to live away from my husband's family and then on a monthly rental, but the greatest place to live is obviously at home. I should think about upgrading soon because the house is getting a little rundown in some areas. After speaking with my father, who recommended a reputable contractor, I began chatting with him regarding the project. Living alone is incredibly cozy. I have no ties to anyone. I'm not going to get in trouble for lazing around on the couch. I'm free to eat everything I want without anyone objecting. And for the first time in 3 months, I heard from my ex-husband while I was content with my life at the moment. I didn't recognize the number at first, so I didn't answer the phone. Reluctantly, though, I answered the phone because I assumed it might be from a contractor because the call kept coming from the same number. But my mood was utterly destroyed the moment I recognized the voice. I had gotten a divorce from my ex-husband 3 months prior. I had previously divorced him with legal assistance. We even agreed not to speak to one another ever again. What in the world does he want right now? It's also odd that he would change his phone number simply to call me. Regardless of how you interpret it, we agreed, via our attorney, to never see or speak with one another again. You know there's nothing more for us to discuss, so please don't get in touch with me. He began yapping without my consent as I was about to hang up the phone. Hold on a minute, please. I just need you to listen just for a little while. I'm begging you. It seems that my ex-husband's employer is in dire need of money, and it has been decided to cut his pay. Due to her poor health, my mother-in-law is unable to work. Because her husband doesn't have a consistent job, they are unable to contribute to the living expenses of my sister-in-law. Even though my sister-in-law works many part-time jobs, the majority of her income is going towards repaying my brother-in-law's debt. Given how hard my ex-husband was struggling to make ends meet, the situation was desperate. But it will get harder for him to make ends meet as his pay is reduced. After hearing all of that, all I could think was, okay, is that so? Because they had broken into my home without my consent, done what they liked, and then attempted to evict me. It's just not real. I have no sympathy for those who committed such a crime, and I feel nothing for them. Nothing gets resolved, even if you tell me these things. You should handle things on your own because it's your family. I am powerless to change it. My ex-husband became even more anxious at my statements. He begged in a voice that was on the verge of tears, but I wasn't persuaded. Don't say things like that. We're in serious trouble. We won't even be able to pay the rent for the apartment, and we'll be struggling for food tomorrow. Hey, we used to be a family, right? Please help us. He looked down on my mother-in-law and myself and did little to aid while I was in difficulties. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law have always denigrated me, much like my mother-in-law. They made fun of my unremarkable appearance and my antiquated viewpoint. They didn't seem to care how wounded I was. They warned me not to come around because they stated I was so stiff and out of touch that it was coming through on them. Not only did my mother-in-law exacerbate the situation, but she also made me feel as though I was a barren wife, made me take bizarre herbal remedies, arranged needless doctor's visits, and informed everyone who lived nearby that I was pregnant. In retrospect, my marriage had not a single positive aspect. After the wedding, my ex-husband, who had been such a good man before our marriage, became my mother-in-law's pawn. I was out at an appointment the day my mother-in-law barged into our home for the first time. This apparently offended my mother-in-law, who sobbed to my husband, saying, "I want to be friends with Ashley." But she wasn't there. I'm sad. My ex-husband became angry with me and refused to hear my side of the story. I can't help people who act like this anymore. No matter what you say, my feelings won't change. I can't help you guys, so I'm going to hang up now, and don't ever contact me again. With that, I finally hung up and blocked the new number. She said that she wanted to get along, but all she ever did when we met was badmouth me. My son seems to have lost weight recently. "Is it because your cooking is so bad that he can't eat properly?" She said things like this loudly whether we were at home or outside. I made the decision to update my phone number at the store over the weekend since I knew that my ex-husband could try to reach me again after changing his number. But those four did anything first. They abruptly showed up at my residence at 11 p.m., breaking the lawyer's commitment. They were hammering on the door and shouting, not caring about the time, "Open up, let us in, and take care of us. We're family, you should help us." They were ready to storm in when I tried to open the door, so I assumed I'd try calling through the intercom. "Hey, what's the matter at this hour? Please go back home, as it's causing a nuisance to the neighbors." Still, the four of them were unconcerned. They made a commotion and began hammering on the door. I was amazed that I was handling individuals with such extreme behavior. My hands were still gripping my head. I heard sirens outside and thought about calling the police. It appeared like one of the neighbors had gained the lead. The shocked group tried to flee, believing I had called the police, as soon as they heard the sirens. However, there was already a large group present, making escape impossible. And so the responding cops led the four of them to the police station. When asked about the incident, I gave a detailed account of what had transpired. Word soon got around the neighborhood about what my ex-husband and his friends had done. By the next day, everyone in the office knew what had happened since it came out that one of my ex-husband's coworkers had been among the group that had assembled. Even though he was already struggling due to a pay reduction, the employer was not going to overlook his situation after they called the authorities. After losing his job, my ex-husband was no longer able to pay the rent on his apartment. Their group living arrangement came to an end when he and his sister's family fell out over money. Bob now lives with his mother in poor housing and works many part-time jobs to make ends meet. In a desperate attempt to make ends meet, even his mother has taken up part-time employment a few days a week.